Lena Cross was having a worse than usual Tuesday. Not your typical spilled coffee on the white shirt bad. More like entire former spy agency wants you dead bad. Formerly the CIA's sharpest scalpel. Now she was just sharp-tongued. And on the run. Betrayed. Blacklisted. Her old colleagues, the ones who hadn't yet tried to plant a bomb under her car, probably used her photo for dart practice at the agency Christmas party. She clutched her go-bag tightly. Its contents were more lethal than a cornered badger with a grudge. The city streets blurred into a threatening landscape of potential assassins. Every passing shadow seemed to morph into a sniper. Every pigeon seemed to be watching her with unusual intensity. She needed a car. Fast. And preferably one that didn't scream ex-CIA super assassin making a quick getaway. This was definitely not how she had envisioned her early retirement plan unfolding.
Danny Finch, conversely, was pretty sure his life had hit rock bottom and then started digging. His once promising stand-up comedy career had nosedived spectacularly. It had crashed harder than a lead balloon in a hurricane. Now he was an Uber driver. His current passenger, a woman who smelled strongly of cheap hairspray and simmering disappointment, was undoubtedly preparing to give him a 1-star rating, probably because he'd taken a wrong turn. Twice. His trusty Toyota Prius, which he'd affectionately named the Punchline, felt less like a vehicle and more like his mobile tomb of shattered dreams. He sighed, wistfully dreaming of sold-out comedy clubs, not of passive-aggressive passengers silently judging his every move. His phone buzzed. Another ride request. Maybe this one wouldn't involve an existential crisis before lunchtime, he hoped.
That next ride request was Lena. She didn't so much request his services as commandeer them. One moment, Danny was deeply contemplating the questionable culinary merits of a 3-day-old gas station hot dog. The next, his passenger door was wrenched open with alarming force. A whirlwind of black leather, determined scowl, and an aura of imminent danger landed squarely in his passenger seat.
"Drive!" she barked. The word was a command, not a suggestion.
A sleek, terrifyingly efficient-looking handgun appeared as if summoned by dark magic. It pointed vaguely in the direction of his dashboard. Or perhaps it was aimed at his spleen. Danny gulped. This was definitely going to tank his Uber rating.
"Is this, part of some new premium express service?" he stammered, voice cracking.
Her icy glare could curdle milk from 10 paces. Thus began the world's most reluctant and possibly most explosive road trip. The imposing black sedan wasn't just probably following them, it was most definitely, absolutely, 100% following them. And it had brought friends. Very quirky friends, it turned out. One pair of relentless pursuers looked like they'd escaped a badly managed 1970s disco tribute band. They came complete with sequin jumpsuits and suspiciously large afro wigs that probably concealed all sorts of nefarious items. Another duo, hot on their tail, argued loudly and passionately in Italian, gesticulating wildly with what looked alarmingly like weaponized breadsticks. Or were those unusually long silencers? Lena handled these varied threats with terrifying, almost balletic composure. Danny, for the most part, just screamed. He did, however, accidentally deploy his emergency stash of rainbow glitter confetti, a leftover from a disastrous children's party gig. It momentarily and hilariously blinded the disco assassins. Small, sparkly victories.
"So," Danny ventured, his voice still a little shaky once they'd temporarily shaken their eclectic tale, "not to pry into your obviously secret and dangerous life, but are you, like, a secret agent? Or just incredibly unpopular at parties?"
Lena let out a sigh. It was a deep, world-weary sigh that spoke of countless betrayals and too many explosions.
"Something very much like that," she finally admitted, her eyes scanning the road ahead. "I stumbled upon something I wasn't supposed to see. A project. They called it Project Chimera. Think highly advanced AI-controlled weaponized drones. Basically, tiny little robot ninjas armed with lasers and bad attitudes. My agency, the one I used to work for, wanted to bury it, and naturally me along with it."
Danny's eyes widened considerably. Robot ninjas? This was significantly above his usual pay grade, which was currently 0, given that he was being unwillingly chauffeured by a bona fide super spy. He briefly wondered if robot ninjas had good dental coverage. Danny, in a moment of what he would later describe to anyone who would listen as comedic genius under extreme duress, decided to live-stream their rather unique predicament.
"Help! I'm being kidnapped by a surprisingly attractive spy! This is not a drill!" "Spy jinx, send snacks and backup," he'd babbled frantically into his phone's camera.
He genuinely thought it might get them rescued, or at the very least significantly boost his social media engagement. Instead, the shaky, chaotic footage of Lena expertly disarming a complex car bomb, while Danny provided unhelpful, panicked commentary from the driver's seat, went viral for all the entirely wrong reasons. The gleeful media quickly dubbed them the Chaos Couple. The government, less amused, officially branded them as dangerous domestic terrorists.
Well, Lena commented dryly, reloading her weapon. At least we're famous now. That's something, I suppose.
Their situation was, to put it mildly, objectively terrible. They were being actively hunted by a seemingly endless supply of highly trained assassins with questionable fashion sense. They were vilified by the entire nation, thanks to Danny's ill-advised foray into citizen journalism. And they were currently stuck together in a car that smelled faintly of old gym socks, stale fear, and burnt gunpowder. Yet, somehow, amidst the constant danger and impending doom, they found fleeting moments of surprisingly dark humor.
You know, Danny mused thoughtfully, while Lena expertly hot-wired a borrowed pickup truck after theirs had met an explosive end, this whole experience would make a fantastic stand-up bit. I could call it, My Life as an Incompetent Human Shield, a one-man show.
Lena just grunted in response, but Danny thought he detected the faintest twitch at the corner of her mouth. Maybe, or perhaps she was just concentrating very hard on not electrocuting herself. Their forced proximity was breeding a strange, unexpected kind of camaraderie, forged in gunfire, bad diner coffee, and shared terror. Trust wasn't exactly Lena's strongest suit, not anymore. Her last significant trust exercise with the CIA had involved her nearly ending up gift-wrapped in a body bag and shipped to an undisclosed location. So, the idea of relying on a civilian, a failed comedian whose best defense mechanism appeared to be a well-timed, albeit terrible, pun, it was, to say the least, a work in slow, painful progress. Danny, for his part, was oscillating wildly between sheer, abject terror and a weird, adrenaline-fueled sense of adventure he hadn't known he possessed. He had to trust Lena. He really had no other choice. She was, after all, the only one of them who knew how to reload a Glock without accidentally shooting off her own foot, or more importantly, his.
It's just point and shoot, right? He'd asked innocently during one brief lull in the chaos.
Lena's withering expression had been answer enough. No. Definitely, emphatically not. The hit squads just kept on coming. It was like a never-ending parade of lethal weirdos. Each new team seemed determined to be more bizarre and outlandish than the last. There was Le Chef, a surprisingly agile, portly man who wielded razor-sharpened spatulas and flaming crepe pans with terrifying culinary accuracy. They narrowly escaped his clutches in a supermarket, using a barrage of frozen turkeys and canned hams as improvised cover. Then came the Mime twins, eerily silent but shockingly effective with their invisible ropes and surprisingly solid imaginary walls. Danny, bless his cotton socks, actually tried to engage them in a competitive mime-off. It didn't go well for him. Lena had to physically drag him away while he was still pathetically trapped inside an imaginary glass box of his own making. Their life had become a relentless, explosive, and increasingly surreal live-action cartoon. Amidst the constant explosions and near-death experiences, Lena's rigorous training began to kick in. She started to follow the faint digital breadcrumbs left by Project Chimera. These clues, murky and dangerous, eventually led them to a disgruntled, twitchy ex-programmer named Barry. Barry lived in his mother's basement. It was a subterranean lair surrounded by towering stacks of action figures still in their original packaging and an alarming number of empty pizza boxes. He was, understandably, terrified, but he had information. He possessed a data chip, the key to unraveling the entire conspiracy.
The AI, Barry stammered, his voice barely a whisper. It's learning too fast. The damn thing is evolving. The mogul, Silas Thorne, he thinks he can control it. He thinks it's his pet project. He's so wrong.
The stakes were no longer just about Lena's personal survival or clearing her name. They were global, or at least really bad for a significant portion of the planet's population. Lena had an old contact, someone she thought, or at least hoped, was still clean, someone not on Thorne's payroll.
He owes me one, she'd stated, a grim, determined set to her jaw that Danny was starting to recognize.
Turns out, her contact owed the agency, and by extension Thorne, a whole lot more. The planned clandestine meetup was, predictably, a trap. More deafening gunfire, more spectacular explosions, more of Danny screaming like a particularly distressed banshee who'd stubbed its toe. But this time, Danny did something completely unexpected, something almost brave. He slammed their battered, smoking Prius directly into the traitor's shiny, expensive sports car with a defiant yell.
Nobody messes with the punchline and gets away with it, he shrieked, half terrified, half exhilarated.
Lena stared, momentarily stunned. Maybe, just maybe, the comedian wasn't entirely useless after all. His sudden, reckless loyalty, however accidental it might have been, was a genuine surprise. A surprisingly welcome one at that. Silas Thorne, tech billionaire extraordinaire, certified evil genius, and proud owner of what was rumored to be an absolutely impenetrable fortress of solitude and high-tech security. Or so he fondly thought. Lena's plan to breach it was audacious. It was daring. It was probably certifiably insane. Danny's main contribution to the planning stage was mostly centered around ensuring an adequate supply of snacks for the mission and providing dubious moral support, and quite accidentally discovering Thorne's deep dark secret weakness, a debilitating allergy to cats.
"We need a cat," Danny declared with sudden uncharacteristic certainty.
Lena just looked at him, her expression unreadable.
"We need a miracle, Danny," she retorted dryly.
But the cat idea, strangely enough, stuck. Their final cobbled-together plan involved a stolen catering van, several large cans of premium tuna, and a very confused, slightly grumpy tabby cat they recruited and temporarily named Agent Whiskers. It was, by any objective measure, a truly terrible plan. But it was the only one they had. The infiltration itself was pure, unadulterated, glorious chaos. Agent Whiskers, high on an entire can of tuna and the thrill of unexpected freedom, wreaked absolute havoc within Thorne's sterile fortress. Elite security guards sneezed uncontrollably. Sensitive alarms blared throughout the compound. Danny, unconvincingly disguised as a nervous, clumsy caterer, accidentally set off the overhead fire sprinklers with a poorly aimed champagne cork during a crucial moment.
"Party foul!" he yelled gleefully as heavily armed guards slipped and slid on the suddenly slick marble floors.
Lena moved through the ensuing pandemonium like a silent wraith, a focused point of deadly calm in the heart of a storm largely of her own, and Danny's making. She expertly used Danny's chaotic, unpredictable energy as both a shield and a distraction. It was almost beautiful to watch, in a terrifying, highly property-damaging sort of way, of course. Lena finally confronted Silas Thorne in his supposedly impregnable panic room, which, thanks to Danny accidentally finding the master override codes, scribbled on a forgotten sticky note conveniently left by Thorne's oversized mahogany desk, wasn't quite so panicky or impregnable anymore. Thorne, a man accustomed to controlling global markets and bending governments to his will, was reduced to a sputtering, red-faced mess by one determined ex-assassin and the lingering, pervasive scent of cat dander. Lena didn't just want revenge for herself, she wanted to dismantle his dangerous toy. She coolly uploaded a crippling virus into his network. She crashed the Project Chimera servers worldwide. And then, just for good measure, she set off a small, precisely contained explosion in his main server room.
"Consider this my official resignation," she told the smoking, sparking wreckage with a grim smile. "And my severance package."
They escaped. Barely. They were covered in soot, sticky champagne, and quite possibly a significant amount of cat hair. They were still very much blacklisted, still technically considered domestic terrorists by most government agencies. But they were alive. And much to their own surprise, they were laughing.
"You know," Danny said, a wide grin splitting his dirty face as they sped away in another conveniently borrowed and much faster car, "for a completely washed-up comedian, I think I might actually have a promising future in tactical diversions and creating mass hysteria."
Lena actually smiled then, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes. Trust had been painstakingly forged in the crucible of fire and explosions. Betrayal had been met with unexpected, almost comical loyalty. And redemption? Maybe it looked a lot like two complete misfits finding humor, and unexpectedly each other, in the smoking, chaotic ruins of their old lives. The road ahead was undoubtedly uncertain, probably still very dangerous. But one thing was for sure, it definitely wouldn't be boring.